I'm Rob Kieval. I'm really honored to have this opportunity to help moderate this panel, and I'm joined by three distinguished panelists. Jotthe Kannappan from Intuitive Ventures, Virginia Giddings from Edwards Lifesciences, and Beatriz Volckaert from Phillips Ventures. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start by asking you to each just introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background, and a little bit about the venture work that you do and how your fund is structured and how you conduct your investments. Jotthe?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here. I'm Jotthe Kannappan. I'm an associate with Intuitive Ventures, which is the venture capital investing platform of Intuitive Surgical. A bit about me. I'm an engineer who fell in love with the world of healthcare entrepreneurship by working for medtech startups. And then I went to go get an MBA. So a little bit of technical and commercial in the way that I think about investing. Intuitive Ventures is a fund that's focused on accelerating the future of minimally invasive care. We invest across a broad range of healthcare disciplines, including digital ecosystem, diagnostics, focal therapeutics, and device platforms. Yeah, I'll stop there. I'm sure we'll dive into more about our strategic lenses in a bit.
All right, I'll go next. I'm Virginia Giddings, VP of Exploration at Edwards Lifesciences. I am also an engineer. And sort of my career journey is marked by innovation and really wanting to participate in the very earliest stages of innovation. My engineering took me to getting a PhD in mechanical engineering, and that sort of launched my career in med tech. And from there, I've been with a number of strategics. So I've been with J&J, Abbott, Stryker, and now Edwards, as well as some smaller companies along the way in a variety of product development and more business strategy kinds of roles. Some of you in the audience probably know Edwards Lifesciences. We're a company that makes valves, has pioneered valves, and also critical care businesses. I'm sure we'll get into a bit about how we go about doing things and what my title means and that kind of thing. But, I guess just in summary, I look to the outside world for innovation. I focus on the entrepreneurs like many in the audience here. So I'll pass it to you.
Great.
Yeah.
So hi, everyone. I'm Beatriz Volckaert. I'm biotechnologist by background, and I've been now a few years on the venture capital space. So I started on an oncology fund. Mainly, they were fundraising, so I had to jump to the next one. I was for 3 years on an impact investing fund, mainly focused on digital health, medical devices, on seed Series A, so investing mainly in Spain, but also across Europe. And I moved to the Netherlands last year to join the Philips Ventures team. So right now, Philips is a 100% health tech company. So we divest all the appliances and all the lighting business that we had. And right now we're mainly focused on image-guided therapy, on precision diagnosis, connected care, personal health. So all these type of technologies, and then we also have a digital health fund to focus on new trends, new areas that maybe Philips wants to be on a future, mainly investing on Series A, Series B. So great to be here.
Great. Well, thank you. I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience who are here. They're raising money. They might want to investigate whether you could be a partner. Could you just give us some of the basics about your fund and how you structure your investments? At what stage do you usually like to enter? What's a typical initial size of your investment, the total investment over the life of your fund? I know some of the strategics, don't like to lead rounds, don't like to take board seats. Could you just give us some flavor on your own practice?
Yeah, sure. We have a more traditional approach if we focus on investing on the companies that can complement the current products that we have in Philips. In here, the business sponsor those investments. Therefore, we are more stage agnostic, so we can invest from Series A, let's say, until 100 million. So we are quite broad, let's say, in this sense. Then we have a more, like a digital health fund. In here, it's mainly Series A, Series B, from 2 to 5 million. We normally syndicate those deals across the globe. We have like some teams in the US, in Europe, also in China, Singapore, India. So we kind of like split by geographies. And mainly digital health, pure software. And also we have another type of investment that is investing through other venture capital. So we act as a limited partner on those funds just to diversify a bit more the portfolio and to also gather some insights from some specific geographies or some, let's say, like some thematic areas.
So is that pretty typical for a strategic to be a limited partner in a VC fund? I mean, Virginia, how does Edwards interact with venture capitalists? And if you could just give us some of the same flavor about your own fund.
Yeah. So at Edwards, we're truly strategic. We're looking at it from the perspective of how do we build a portfolio that's going to be our future products. And it was one of the things that with my innovation journey that really drew me to Edwards was how they approach it. And they do it through, I actually sit in a business unit, advanced technology, that's not a revenue business unit. It's a business unit that we form to be the launching pad for our next businesses. And we did it 20 years ago many in the audience know this story with our TAVR, our transaortic valve therapy. We started it in advanced tech. We had an internal program. We ran that in parallel with an external investment we made in a company called PVT. And ultimately, the PVT technology was the one that we went with. And then from there, launched that business, which is now our biggest business, right? So it's a very successful model for that. And then we followed that with our mitral and tricuspid therapies. And so we really see our external effort within advanced tech is how do we build that portfolio of technologies that is going to be our future business? And we see it through that lens. We don't see it as a financial investment per se. We see it as a path to ultimately acquiring technologies for the portfolio, or it can be many of the learnings along the way as these companies advance their products.
So is it possible to generalize what % of deals that you invest in you ultimately acquire?
What percentage?
Is it most, half, some?
Well, we don't exactly look at it through that framework because, and I don't know what the percentage is, but we certainly do, far less deals than some and more than others. And the way we look at it is more from the perspective of what are we learning along the way? Because with some of the failures, you can learn an amazing amount from a failure, right? So a failure is not, for us as a strategic investor, is not a failure of that investment if we've learned a lot about it. That said, we invest, across the spectrum. So that's sort of a question we get all the time. At what point do you come in to invest? And the answer is it depends. Sometimes we'll go in early if we think that we're going to be able to learn something, and if we think that a technology is so highly aligned that we want to be along on the journey. And sometimes we'll go in later.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Jotthe,
absolutely. So Virginia, you mentioned that Edwards thinks about investments as the future products of Edwards. At Intuitive Ventures, we tend to think about our investments as the future of minimally invasive care, right? So it tends to be pretty broad. And in contrast as well, we are a financial and strategically motivated VC. So to your point earlier about, the percentage of deals that are acquired or may not be acquired, we don't invest typically with the intention of acquiring, and nor does an Intuitive Ventures investment preclude an Intuitive Surgical acquisition. Part of this is the financial design or the financial motive behind our investment, right? We want the best possible outcomes for our portfolio companies, be that acquisition by Intuitive, acquisition by another player, or an IPO. And this is also why we don't tend to tie our deals to strategic terms. It's a big portion of how we think about investing because of that dual mandate. On the strategic portion, it is, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, about our thesis in minimally invasive care. So our definition of strategic value is incredibly broad. It can be anything from a technology that sits along a patient pipeline that Intuitive also happens to sit on, to something that's adding ecosystem value to multiple medtech players in a given healthcare vertical.
Thanks. So Virginia, as I understand it, you have a much more focused mission in terms of your investments, and you go maybe not as broad, but maybe deeper. Can you just talk about some of the implications
and last
of
night,
that?
if you were at the forum last night with Antoine, he was talking about, seeing 2,000 deals a year or whatever the number is, and then, how many actually become deals. And I think, for us at Edwards, we've gone very deep. I mean, we've gone deep in structural heart, and we're focused, and we can pretty quickly get to what companies are of interest to us, what technologies. So that has a benefit in sort of that depth of relationship. One of the questions that comes up often is like, how do you source deals? And there's of course going out to meetings like this and meeting with people, and that's a great thing. And I've had a lot of fantastic conversations the past couple of days with entrepreneurs, and some of them I didn't know before. But we operate in the structural heart area. That's what we're and it's there's a lot going on in that narrow space. But we tend to, we know a lot of people, and we tend to know the entrepreneurs who are in our space. We know our key opinion leaders, we know our physician customers very well. And so we tend to get to the entrepreneurs who are relevant, and likewise they can get to us pretty quickly, I think.
Okay.
And we can, pretty quickly give them that, hey, we're really interested, or, no, or not. I mean, usually it's more somewhere in the middle of like, it's not no, it's not, which is frustrating to entrepreneurs, right? Like, we want an answer. It's like, well, no, it's not no, but it's not now. We're very interested, and we want to see what you learn, and we want you to get to certain milestones, depending on the technology. Sometimes it's actually an early stage milestone of a preclinical data, and that would be really interesting to us. Sometimes it's, hey, we really want to see first in human data. So, so it's that there's I've been with some of the other, I've listed off the companies I've been with. So, they have much broader mission and mandates there in terms of the kinds of therapeutic areas they look at. Which made it a lot more complex for me to navigate it. There's other companies. It's, in Edwards, it's pretty straightforward. We have a really good idea of, what's on strategy for us.
Well, I mean, being so focused and having so much domain expertise in structural heart and having seen so much, I wonder if that gives you comfort to invest in deals earlier on than maybe other investors would, just because you can really intuit, issues that technologies will face down the road.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So if Edwards, one of the things you will hear Mike Musalem, our CEO, or others at Edwards say is that we want to lead in transforming the standard of care for patients who have structural heart disease. And so if you want to lead in transforming the standard of care, then you really need to get in early. And if you're focused, and if this is your area, then you do have to invest early on, or and it's interesting because entrepreneurs will often come to me and come to me for an investment, right? Hey, we're raising a round. We want you to participate because we need the financial backing, and this leads to a discussion, right? And then often at the end of it, the most valuable piece that I can contribute to them and that Edwards can contribute to them is some of the guidance and input that they get from us, because we'll get into very candid discussions, and sometimes the most valuable thing isn't the money. I mean, I'm not saying the money's important, right? And I'm sure everyone, the entrepreneurs in the audience are saying, no, the money is absolutely important. But we've participated in this field for so many years, and we have some insights that we actually would be pretty happy to share. We're part of this ecosystem, and we want to see these companies survive, thrive, and be able to bring these therapies out to help patients, and that's important to us. And part of we want to advance innovation for Edwards, of course, but importantly, we want to advance care for patients.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is just having the discussion, and we can help, avoid, some of the side tracks and, the paths that maybe we've been down that haven't been fruitful for us in the past, so we can help entrepreneurs in that way.
Great. Okay, thanks. So you talked a little bit about deal flow and what that looks like at Edwards. Bea, what does deal flow look like for you? Do you have stacks of business plans on your desk to with hopelessly too much to get through, or do you go out and seek what you're looking for? Tell us a little bit about your standard practice and how you engage with entrepreneurs.
Sure. Like I was thinking about this question, like how narrow, how broad are we? At the end, we are trying to focus on the major areas, so cardiology, neurology, oncology, and we try to cover the entire care continuum. But at the end, of course, like when you're seeing a company, then there's like specific business on image-guided therapy for structural heart diseases that they are super focused on this. Then it's great to be on the venture side because you just check internally with those experts that, like they've been for years on this whole department that is just focused on this. And on the digital health side, it's more about, okay, so which is the new trend on the market? And we're trying to, like be more agnostic and just follow the customer voice, let's say. And yeah, at the end, like deal flow, the good ones, you need to go to this type of events to look for them and trying to find them. And also having this relationship with other investors is, yeah, for me, like the best way. But yeah, like sometimes, of course, it's quite difficult to manage everything, but yeah, it's great to see all the innovation.
Great. Jotthe, how about for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So our deal flow comes from very similar places to both Virginia's and Bea's. We get a fair amount of inbound. Fair amount of it comes from coming to lovely events like this. Fair amount of it from networks of other really sophisticated investors, as well as a fair amount of thesis-driven outreach that we do as well. And this is actually something that I'll cite as super important for a broad investor, right? So we invest across a variety of verticals, but we still find it super important to have an informed opinion about an area before we start investing in it. We want to be able to add value from day one, and we want to be able to draw on the wealth of resources that Intuitive can offer to any of our portfolio companies, be that regulatory, reimbursement, IP, commercial, clinical, you name it. We're going to try to help you with it if you would like us to. Beyond that, I also wanted to sort of tie into the way that the broad definition of strategic value is actually important for our financial mandate as well. So because we're investing across the entire future of minimally invasive care, the definition of success isn't necessarily what we're going to bring in-house, right? The definition of a success is what is good for the ecosystem and is what is going to provide returns. by having a really broad definition of strategic value, we are increasing the reach of deals that we get access to, which is why we're seeing hundreds of them a year, and it also offers us access to the very best financial opportunities. So it's actually a really key role in unlocking the other pillar of value that we're trying to drive.
Great. So obviously, corporate investing has been around for many, many years, and I'm sure it's evolved over the years. And somebody who was trying to work with a strategic, 5, 10 years ago, it might be a very different situation today. So I'm wondering, and Jotthe, I'll ask you first, what is different with corporate investing in 2022? Obviously, the economic landscape has changed. We're in a post-COVID era. The practice of medicine has changed. The very definition of what is medtech has changed. You have drug delivery, you have software as a medical device, AI, digitally enabled technologies. What's it like today?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is more an answer broadly to the world of healthcare than it is specific to CVC, and I'm really curious for both of your thoughts on this. But I think the past couple of years have thrown a lot of problems in healthcare in really sharp relief, right? So we've seen increasing burnout amongst providers. We've seen real problems with inequity and access to care. We've seen changing reimbursement landscapes. We've just seen a lot surface. And I think in this moment, entrepreneurs are really the heroes, right? When the world sees problems, entrepreneurs see opportunities. And our role as CVC in a world ridden with problems to fix is to be able to provide the capital and expertise to aid entrepreneurs in the process of fixing those problems. And that's an honor and privilege of the work that we do. So my somewhat pithy answer to your question about, what's changed about the world of CVC is that it's also actually an incredible world of opportunity for us right now to be able to really have impact.
So if we were to reconvene in 3 to 5 years, what would you predict the future would look like at that time when this is all sorted out and figured out?
It's all figured out. All of it. We've solved it all. I guess to start with what's different, over the 30-some years of my career and 20-some where I've been in more sort of business development roles, I think when we get into discussions today, we very quickly get to what is the value in terms of the healthcare system, whereas 20 years ago that really wasn't being talked about. So that whole value piece, and I think that's important for the entrepreneurs in the audience to really be thinking through, what is that value story? How could this result in positive value to the healthcare system instead of destructive value. So that's an important piece. Obviously the whole digitization of healthcare, which we've been talking about forever, right? That goes back really far, right? The banking industry managed to get there, and we're still it feels like we're just still starting, despite billions, or I don't know if it's trillions of dollars in investment, however much has gone in. But I think that's where we look forward, and 5 years from now, hopefully we will have a lot of really good case studies that resonate with all of us in terms of how has digital health advanced. The other piece of it, and actually I was when I was with Abbott, I was with Abbott Nutrition part of my time there. So that was really interesting because that is a consumer business, right? So there's also the consumerization of healthcare, and what is that going to mean in terms of if we're putting more data and information in the hands of the consumer, in the hands of the patient, or maybe in the hands of the person who's not a patient yet, and what are the implications there in terms of their health? And I think all of that has yet to be seen, but that's sort of the wave that we're on right now, where there's been a lot of investment in it. There's still the progress to be seen. We have these companies that are not traditional healthcare companies, you know, the Apples, the Walmart, the CVS, I mean,
Best
you
Buy,
name it, the
yeah.
Best Buy, that are entering, and they think about things very differently. They invest in things very differently. They advance technologies it's a totally different cycle time. And they need those of us who are experienced in
Yeah.
healthcare to really bring. So I think, you know, looking ahead, you know, there's sort of like, I mean, we're in this continuum, right, where, you know, hopefully 5 years from now, 10 years from now, consumers will have in their hands better sets of tools to help them be able to control the factors that they can control in terms of their health, and that they will embrace and use these tools so that patients can be managed more effectively in different settings and not, you know, be coming into the emergency room as their like frontline therapy.
Great. And of course, more equal access to healthcare.
And more, yeah, and
all.
addressing the health disparities,
yeah.
of course. That's a big,
For sure.
big one, and it's much needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. 2 more quick questions, and we'll open it up for questions from the audience. Bea, you know, with corporate investors, there sometimes is an apprehension about, is there inherent conflict of interest, you know, showing technology to a strategic that's working in the same space. You may still be in stealth mode. Maybe your IP is not all captured. You know, you have any words of comfort for entrepreneurs in the audience about help disabuse them of that?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, a really important for us too. We have different ways. For example, our team, even on the Philips Ventures team, we are kind of like separate between like the investment team, the one that the people that sits on the board, the ones that they have like the fiduciary duties, the ones that try to kind of like be the barrier between the entrepreneurs and you know, like just trying to behave on behalf of the company, of the startup. And then there's also like people apart from the operation team. There's kind of like the BD people that they are kind of like the link between us and every business. And at the end, we are trying to don't have any strategic rights. We try to also syndicate those deals so we can share also this kind of like influence that you might have also for the startup. So we have different mechanisms. But for now, we're trying, to solve this conflict. But yeah, it's a tricky one that sometimes plenty of entrepreneurs ask us like, hey, so how do you really manage it? Because it's super important.
Jotthe, anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we manage conflicts of interest in very similar ways, right? I think the 2 most important things, I mentioned earlier, we don't tie our deals to strategic terms, and that's specifically because we want to create financial alignment between the success of our entrepreneurs and our success. That alignment inherently removes a lot of the conflict that might come from working with a strategic. The second thing I'll mention is that firewalls are super important in how we operate. So our ventures group is sort of an independent org that sits and has access to all of the insights and expertise of the parent company, and we're happy to draw on that talent when a portfolio company wants us to, but that's a unidirectional flow of information. Nothing that is seen by our ventures group that is not non-confidential is ever shared with the rest of the org unless, again, we have explicit permission from the entrepreneurs in question. Mm-hmm. And I think that also helps alleviate a lot of concerns. Yeah.
Super, thank you. All right, last question. I don't know if there are microphones that can circulate around. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to ask the panel is that, you know, these days we talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It certainly talked a lot within HR circles, all the way up to the boardroom. And we, as a service provider, get scrutinized very carefully by prospective clients about our DEI practices and in fact the diversity that we can demonstrate. I'm just curious to what extent DEI has become part of the conversation or part of the consideration for you when thinking about making investments? Jotthe?
Sure.
We'll just go down the line.
Absolutely. So DEI is near and dear to my heart, and I would say pretty important to Intuitive Surgical as a general corporation. It's one of our core values. The way that we tend to think about it in terms of how it impacts our investing, we're asking questions about DEI and how we invest, who we invest in, and what we invest in. So on the how portion, it's, who's on our investing team? Is our investing team reasonably diverse? We're very excited to have a panel today of 3 women, but in the world of venture capital, only 11% of VC investors are women. We can do better. 29.5% of angel investors are women. There's no reason that those people can't be working in institutional capital. It's also about, thinking about implicit bias in the ways that we make decisions, being really proactive about our processes for filtering deals. Who we invest in. So this is about deal flow, making sure we're getting a representative spread of entrepreneurs from a variety of backgrounds. This, again, is something that the world of VC-backed founders has had trouble with in the past. 75% of VC-backed founders are white, while only 1.8% are Black or Latino. We can do better, and we can do that by being intentional about where our deal flow is coming from and making sure we're getting a diverse set of candidates in the first place to be able to evaluate. And finally, what we're investing in. It's no secret that there are a whole host of issues and inequity in healthcare, be they social determinants of health, different outcomes for different racial groups, representation in clinical trials. AI bias is something that's come up a lot recently, but depending on the training data that you're using. So specifically in the companies that we're investing in, we want to be talking to them about how to avoid these pitfalls and how to be actually designing an inclusive technology.
Nice, thank you. Virginia?
Yeah, so it's so worthy of a much longer discussion, of course, right? That goes without saying. But in terms of strict criteria of like, will you do a deal because of this? No, not really, but we will ask questions. So if your clinical study is not inclusive of half of the population, that will raise a lot of questions of how you are planning to capture that population and whether this technology is attractive to us or not. If your board does not include representation of, I'm not even going to say minorities, right? Because if it doesn't include women, it's not a minority. But if it doesn't include underrepresented minorities, it will also raise some questions. At the end of the day, we try to, have the discussion and provide recommendations if people are, if entrepreneurs are really struggling with that and they feel like it's important to have a diverse voice there, we can certainly provide recommendations.
Yeah, great, thank you. I did notice that the room got quieter as
really
we're talking about
yeah, I know.
DEI. So
This is like where everyone's like, can't we go to the bar now? Do we have to talk about
I think people are very interested in the
and
topic.
this was one we weren't sure.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Are we going to bring this up or not? And
Yeah.
it's sort of like the elephant in the room. You have 3 women up here on the panel, and that's interesting. But why aren't we? Maybe we need to flip that sort of observation and say, why would that be
Why not?
unusual? And when we see a panel up there that doesn't include any women in the healthcare field where there are a lot of women leaders, maybe that's more sort of the conversation we should be having.
Well, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. So, well, again, like with the topic of diversity, like at the end, like Philips is super focused in general terms of like ESG. However, on the investment team now we are starting also so to apply this type of politics. The thing is that of course we can ask, we can have like and raise the voice on the boards, but at the end, of course, it's about the culture of the company, and I think that of course as an investor you need to try to work on it, and it's step by step. From an investment perspective, apart from doing this, for example, like now we are analyzing like the investment theme of women's health and not just focused on technologies that affects affect directly women, but also like on maybe diseases that like affects us, cardiovascular diseases, totally different. So we're also approaching from this sense. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I hope we have time for one or two questions. If there's any burning questions that we didn't cover. People are eager to get, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's any right answer to that or any one answer to that. LinkedIn, any email and any way of reaching out to us. And entrepreneurs tend to connect into our organization in all different ways. And ultimately, it will get to someone, the right person. And chances are there's not any one right person. For Edwards, the exploration team is out there, and we're definitely a point of contact for all of the entrepreneurs. And then in terms of timing, it's sort of it's a funny one, right? In the sense that sometimes entrepreneurs come to strategics and they say, hey, it's too early for us to be talking. And then you come later and, maybe, plans have been shaped at that point and maybe the direction isn't exactly how we would have wanted to see it. So it's sort of like, the just right thing. But I think there's nothing wrong with going early. You can't turn back time, right? So if you're going to be anything, come to us early, and we will let you know if it's too early, and then we continue the discussion. And what I try to do is work with entrepreneurs in terms of if it is too early, what would we like to see, and what would be the next good timing to be able to get together with them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's always prudent to reach out early. And our answer might be it's too early. But when we say just we want to stay in touch, we actively do want to stay in touch. We want to be apprised of things as they are occurring and how the timing of the investment might make a little sense.
Yeah, and also there's the businesses on all these corporates that the company can start partnering and piloting before we invest. So you can go one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I'll tell you, I've been working with corporate investors for many years, and my experience has been entirely positive. From my experience, the corporate investors that I've worked with have been incredibly sophisticated, incredibly thoughtful, incredibly practical, and have added a ton of value and helped us think through things that even the pure venture investors weren't in as good a position to help us with. So thank you for what you do, and I'm a strong supporter. So I thank everybody for your attention, and please join me in giving a round of thank yous to our panelists.
Thank you.